Begins at today's Positively Aging Project. Our afternoon begins with a research update, and we do this each and every year. And we have three people joining us today from BIOS Clinical, Doctor of Pharmacology, Gulko Marcos. Did I pronounce that right? Close. From Eisenhower Health, and joining us from Italy, Dr. Ann Stapleton. Dr. Stapleton, did I pronounce that correctly? I believe I did. And from Palm Tree Clinical, Dr. Carlos Martinez. You can wave, it's okay. Just let people know that's you. Yes, there we go. Now we know that that is you. All right, and Jeff Taylor, are you going to do a quick introduction here, or should we just go ahead with the session? All right, let's start with the session. And Dr. Marcos, you're first. You are welcome to do it from either location. Is that correct, Jeff? How do you want it? All right, we'll get you. I'll bring them. Do we have another mic? I'll bring this one over to you. We're improvising as we go. And then when you're done, I think we'll go to her in Italy.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Gulko Marcos. I am the Chief Medical Officer of BIOS Clinical Research, and we are the new kids in town. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about who we are, what we do, but most importantly, why we're doing it, before we get into talking about the clinical research opportunities that we have here in Capella Valley. So our team is passionate about infectious disease, and we are focused on bringing clinical trial opportunities to the region for HIV and PrEP. And I started this company in October of last year. I left the HIV pharmaceutical industry after almost a decade, and it was a lot of fun bringing really innovative new medicines to the market. But one of the things that I realized while I was in industry was that they're doing research at the same sites, and the places that need more clinical trial opportunities are actually lacking in sites. And so I thought to myself, it would be a great opportunity to bring capabilities to perform clinical research to those regions that I had identified needed more opportunities for the community. And so we know we have Carlos at Palm Tree Clinical. They've been doing this for quite a long time. And I thought it would be a great place for us to start as well in Palm Springs, given the patient population, long-term survivors, and some of the new and interesting studies and innovative new medicines that are coming to market to make that a local opportunity for the community here. And so everything happens for a reason. I have an amazing team. While we're new, everyone on the team is well experienced in HIV and clinical research. And we've got some familiar faces. Leah Lane, who's here with us today, she's our senior coordinator. She's been doing research for quite some time, and as well previously at Eisenhower. Rod Hagen had been doing research at Borrego with the late Dr. Scheibel. And we have a number of community advisors. We have some great clinical trial investigators, and Dr. Ruan, who's hiding in the audience, as well as our scientific advisor. He's been doing clinical research in HIV for well over 30 years and is overseeing everything with me. So we're just, I'm very lucky to have such a wonderful team. And our vision is to provide equitable access to clinical trials, as I mentioned. I want to make it possible to bring the kinds of clinical trials that are being done in urban cities like in LA. We probably have 10 to 15 clinical research sites out there. But as I mentioned, here in Palm Springs, there are very few. And the reason for that is it's very difficult to conduct these studies. You have to be very meticulous. You have to have the right resources to do it. And it's definitely a commitment to the community. You can't just start and stop. And so probably Carlos can speak to that experience as well. So with all that being said, I wanted to show you what our current study lineup is. And we have 3 studies right now for people living with HIV. And I'm going to talk about each one of those studies. We've got one study for PrEP as well. Okay, I'm going to start talking about Victagriviera, Lena, Capovir, and this is a new combination for patients who are currently on complex regimens. I think this is actually a study that will apply to a lot of folks out here in Palm Springs, particularly long-term survivors who have been on multiple different HIV regimens. You might have had a history of drug resistance. There is some reason why you don't qualify to be on a 1 pill once a day regimen. And so this is a new combination bringing together Victagriviera and Lenacapavir. And Lenacapavir is a drug that is actually under FDA review right now for heavily treatment experienced individuals, and to make possible a once a day regimen for folks who are treatment experienced. So this is a current gap right now, is that we've been hearing for a very long time that all of the new regimens coming to market are more so geared towards individuals who are either starting therapy for the first time or who are early on in their HIV treatment, but not so much for folks who are treatment experienced. So here's an option to simplify your regimen and be able to have a one pill once a day. And I'm trying to move these slides forward. And by the way, Jeff, these are not the slides. These are a different set of slides. That's okay. So we also have another, it's okay, I'm going with the flow. I had a different set of slides for today's presentation. This is from Positive Life. That's okay. So we've got a once a week regimen coming to the coming really soon. We're going to be initiated probably in about a month and a half or so. These are for this is for individuals who are currently on Biktarvy. And soon in phase 3, it'll be for all comers. It'll be for all people who are on all different kinds of regimens, but it's taking folks who are on a 1 pill once a day and moving them to a 1 pill once a week. So I want to say, coming from pharma and actually being part of a company that sort of set the trajectory for the way that treatment is evolving in HIV, it's really moving towards fewer medicines and longer acting medicines as options. So this is an example. We've got injectable medicines on the market right now, once every month or once every 2 months, soon to be once every 6 months. And we also have, for folks who don't want to be on an injection now, a once a week option. All right, trying to move the slides. I don't know if I should point this way. Oh, okay. So since this wasn't the slide set, I'm going to just talk about one other study or 2 other studies we have going on. It's an observational study. That means there is no new medicine involved. But if you're someone who's heavily treatment experienced with multi-drug resistance, so you're a long-term survivor, you've kind of been through the gamut, we have a study looking at how you've been managed over time. How has your treatment evolved and what have been your outcomes? And there is very little known about individuals who are characterized as heavily treatment experienced. And so this is an area of research right now to learn more about the kinds of medicines that are being utilized, as well as your health outcomes. And so there would be nothing for you to do other than to go to your regular doctor's visits, and we collect basically your medical health information as part of that study. So if you'd like to contribute to data and a better understanding of long-term survivors and folks who have been through a lot during their time living with HIV, that would be great. And then finally, we do have a study for PrEP. So for individuals who are HIV negative, and this is looking again at a drug called Lenacapavir, but the injectable formulation once every 6 months. And the criteria around that are pretty strict. So if you want to learn more about that, please come to our booth, and I'm happy to talk about any of the studies we have going on. But as you can see, we're actually quite busy, and we're hoping to bring more research opportunities to the Valley. So please do come by and see us at the booth. And if you're someone who's interested in being a participant in a clinical trial, we'd love to take your information. And as studies come our way, reach out to you to see if you'd be interested. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sure. So we are, as part of clinical research, monitoring viral loads and T cells. And so if you are a participant in a clinical research study, those things are being looked at very carefully and much more frequently than if you're just going to your regular standard of care. Am I noticing improvement in T cells? You mean for new therapies in general? Yeah, so it depends. There's actually one medicine that came to the market recently called Recobia, and that also has some impact on CD4 cells. They're looking at it in individuals who are heavily treatment experienced, and they're starting to look at people who are virologically suppressed if they add that medicine on, if it improves their T cells, especially if they've had longstanding low T cell counts. So, and generally speaking, with therapies, as you're moving on to therapy for the first time, if you have detectable viral loads and you're able to get on a regimen that can get your viral load under control, that's usually accompanied by an increase in CD4 count. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Roku. This is terrific. And next up will be Dr. Ann Stapleton. I'm bringing up her slides.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Why is this not? Try this again. We are. And slideshow. Your slides are up. So go ahead, Dr. Stapleton.
Okay, can you hear me?
And when you're ready to advance to the next slide.
Oh, and can you hear me okay? Or not?
Dr. Stapleton,
Yes,
you
can
hear?
you hear me or no?
now we can hear you. You'll need to speak up. You're just really faint.
Okay, sorry
That's
about
better.
that. Okay, good. Thank you for your attention, and next slide, please. Can you, oh yeah, there you go. Okay. So I'm going to tell you about some of the trials that we have ongoing and some that are being still, where data is still being collected, but they're no longer enrolling. We'll start with one of those, which is the Reprieve Trial. And can everyone still hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you great. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So this is a trial of people with HIV infection who do not meet cardiovascular prevention recommendations for statin therapy, our normal guidelines. And so it's a trial of pitavastatin versus placebo. It's 6,500 patients who are being observed for 6 years. It's fully enrolled throughout the country. It's an NIH trial, which is nice for us to have in the Valley as being a Reprieve site. This allows us to do a few other ACTG trials if they should come up. And in this trial,
You can ask everybody on Zoom to
sorry.
please mute themselves. Go ahead. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm only on my phone, so you shouldn't be able to hear any echo from me. Is that
Might have
correct?
been another person.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, this is an NIH trial, and we are a Reprieve site. So that means we're eligible to do some other ACTG sponsored trials. And in this one, the goal is to assess whether statin therapy reduces cardiovascular events and other inflammation-mediated comorbidities in people who would not otherwise receive a statin who are living with HIV. And so far, we have several participants. Everyone's doing okay. And we're yet to hear what the outcome of this trial will be. But so far, the interim analyses show certainly no worse outcomes for those on statins and some hints that they may do better. So next slide, please. So the Capella study, this is a study in subjects with resistance to at least 2 antiretroviral drugs in at least 3 classes who are on ART but have not yet suppressed their HIV viral load. And this is also lenacapavir, a capsid inhibitor subcutaneously injected every 6 months, plus an optimized background ART regimen. It's fully enrolled, it's Gilead sponsored, and they originally had tried to get approval last year, but then just have fairly recently applied for approval of the lenacapavir at FDA, and I think FDA just accepted their reapplication. They had a production problem with the drug for a while in this injection trial, but that's been all resolved. The trial's resumed, and we have a few people on this, and they are doing well. Next slide, please. Now, this is a mouthful here. This is the same study that Dr. Morkos was talking about. This is the Gilead 621-6289 trial. And this, its title is an operationally seamless, which I think sounds like an interesting plan in advance for anyone who's done clinical trials. Phase 2/3 randomized open label multicenter active controlled study to evaluate the safety and efficacy of Victagriviera lenacapavir versus stable baseline regimen in biologically suppressed people with HIV-1 on stable complex treatment regimens. So again, as you heard earlier, this is a once daily fixed dose combination of Victagriviera with lenacapavir, which is the same drug we're talking about in the Capella study, only now in an oral formulation. And as a capsid inhibitor, what's interesting about this drug is it does in itself achieve one of the goals of our therapy, which is to hit the HIV life cycle in at least 2 places. In fact, it's thought to hit it in 3 places. So there you have Victagriviera, which is your integrase inhibitor plus lenacapavir. And the idea is if people have been virologically stable for the past 6 months and they're on a relatively complex regimen, one example of which is a boosted PI or non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitor, plus at least one other non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitor. This would be a much simpler regimen in many cases, probably a safer regimen long-term because of the fact that the agent, the lenacapavir, in itself as a single drug already inhibits the life cycle in 2 places, probably 3. And then you have your second drug, very powerful drug, Victagriviera. So we are in the process of putting this through the IRB, and we will also be doing this study at Eisenhower. Next slide, please. This is a closed trial that we've just recently finished. So some people listening are probably already on Cabenuva. This was the last trial of Cabenuva, looking at whether or not you could give cabotegravir plus rilpivirine injected every 2 months. And no oral medications, of course. This is a ViiV-sponsored medication, and it's been closed out, and we're transitioning everyone to receive Cabenuva through their regular provider. So those are all of our current HIV studies. I want to mention one other thing, just as food for thought. So I mentioned that we are a Reprieve site. This means that we can be in some AIDS clinical trial groups trials. And one of those, which is just starting, is the STOMP trial. This is the TPOXX medication for monkeypox. And in this trial, it will be placebo controlled, but there is an arm of it that is open label. So if you're meeting certain criteria, you can bail out of the placebo-controlled arm of the study. And we have had some high-level discussions about joining the trial. We still could. It does require quite a bit more work to get things going in terms of regulatory documents and training for various personnel, but it could be a possibility. I mention it without putting it in writing because we're the only place that, aside from UCLA or one of the other Los Angeles institutions or UCSD, where this could be offered. And I know that we've had a couple of weeks, even though I've been in Italy for several days, where TPOX, or I'm sorry, not TPOX, monkeypox has gotten a little bit better. But if you could think about your feelings as a community about whether people would be interested in this trial. It is placebo controlled, which is something one could discuss, but there is this arm of it for open label for severe disease and people not responding early on to treatment. So if we had a better idea of how the community felt about it, that would help us in our decisions about allocation of fairly scarce resources to get this up and going, which I think could be done again because we are an ACGG adjacent site, if you will. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will turn it back to the moderator and turn off my sound. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Stapleton, for joining us. Next up will be Dr. Martinez, and I'll bring up his slides, and then we'll have some time for Q&A afterwards. So cue these up.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Carlos. We have with us here, in case you guys want to come and visit us, our booth is back there. I have Alondra with us here. She's in charge of our gastroenterology department, and I have Daniel Rangel. He's actually the president of Palm Tree Clinical Research, and we can, the three of us can talk to you about our clinical trials that we have done and that we are currently doing. So we've been in the Valley for almost 10, 12 years. We started in 2012, actually. 2010 with Dr. Richard Loftus and Jerry Boshin. He was one of our founders. And we started doing clinical research on highly treatment experienced patients. And we have done clinical trials on highly treatment experienced patients, as well as switch studies. And we did a monotherapy study for quite a while with the company. And so, yeah, we have a lot of experience in regards to HIV research. And we have worked with many providers in the Valley that have been wonderful. Like I said, Dr. Richard Loftus, as well as Dr. Solani Meduli and Dr. Kirkar. And now we're very thankful to be working with Dr. Phyllis Ritchie. You guys actually saw her talk earlier. So yeah, with that being said, I'll go ahead and get started with our presentation or my presentation. So we are currently enrolling patients for a gonorrhea clinical trial. This study we actually did at DAP many years ago. It was a phase 2 clinical trial. They said that the drug was actually working fantastic for to treat gonorrhea. Especially, it's an issue at this moment because of the super gonorrhea, or gonorrhea started to be resistant to a lot of treatments. So this drug is actually one of the good one of the drugs that has shown some very good potential in treating patients. And instead of actually going through your standard of care, which includes an injection, this is actually an oral pill. And it's an oral pill that you take in the morning and then at night. It's 6 pills total that you take, but it's not as painful as getting the shot in your butt. So practically the way that it will work is that you would actually go see Dr. Ritchie that has the PS test or the STI treat test and treat clinic. And from there, she would send them over to us, let us know that there is a potential patient, and eventually we will go ahead and take over at that point. But again, you get treatment on that same day. You don't actually get to wait to see if you qualify for the clinical trial. You get treatment on that same day. And it's only 3 visits that you do. The day that we actually see you for the first time, you get treated. And then after that, we either see you again for a test of cure visit. And after that, the last visit is a telephone call. The next study that we are actually doing at this moment is the Eclipse Study, and it's a colorectal cancer screening. On this one, if you have a colonoscopy coming up, practically the patient can call us and we'll see if you qualify, if you meet all that criteria. But we are looking for patients that have an upcoming colonoscopy that has not gotten the colonoscopy done. And I just ask you to go in for one single visit at the office. We take a blood sample, and we practically, the purpose of this clinical trial is to see if by taking blood samples, if it has the biomarkers necessary to actually detect colorectal cancer instead of doing that very invasive procedure of a colonoscopy. And like I said, it's only one-time visit where you go to our clinic, we draw your blood samples, and after that, we actually call you a year after that, and then we call you again another 2 years later, just to make sure that everything's going good and that there hasn't been any changes in your health. And again, if you guys need any more information regarding this, the person that leads that study is Alondra, and she will be able to tell you a little bit more about it. Upcoming trials at this moment, we have a syphilis treatment. As we have been reading throughout the country, syphilis is starting to pick up and starting to actually keep up on us. And so we want to see what type of alternative treatments there are. With that being said, we are looking at this clinical trial that we're hoping to start late this month or early next month. And it's instead of actually getting the standard of care, which is the injection, we want to see if taking oral treatment for 10 days, if that's enough, or if that's a good way to treat this indication, syphilis. We're looking for patients that are 18 and older and that are currently controlled or that are HIV positive, but are currently controlled and have a CD4 count greater than 350. And we're also doing or we're hoping to start a monkeypox testing clinical research soon. It's doing an oral swab, and hopefully this will lead to doing like those COVID tests where you do them at home. So this is the whole purpose of this clinical trial, to see if doing an oral swab will be one of those tests that could potentially lead to that. And that's my talk at this moment.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Martinez and Dr. Mocos and Dr. Stapleton. So now we have time for questions. So yeah, if you could please come up to the microphone. That way everybody on Zoom can hear as well.
Hi, your gonorrhea test program, it had limitations on medications for HIV. So I wonder.
Yeah, there are some limitations, especially if you're on a protease inhibitor. That would exclude you from the clinical trial. But just call us, and we do have an extensive list of medications that are excluded. But yeah, just call us or contact us, and we'll tell you if you qualify or not for that clinical trial.
I have a question about the Victagriviera and Lena Capovir study. Is that is it just Victagriviera that's the component of that, or is it all the components of Victarvi that's in that drug?
It's just the Victagriviera component.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and so like I said before, it's really interesting. Treatment is evolving and it's going towards more, fewer medicines and simplifying regimens. And Victagriviera is a second generation integrase inhibitor, is very potent. It's it's almost identical to dolutegravir, Tivicay. And it's combined with lenacapavir, which is the new agent. As Dr. Stapleton had mentioned, it's a capsid inhibitor and it's also a highly potent agent. And so again, the idea for that study was to take individuals who are treatment experienced, who may have a history of resistance or tolerability issues, and they're on more than one pill once a day, and to simplify their regimen to initially in the phase 2, it'll be 2 small pills once a day, but it'll become co-formulated in phase 3 to be 1 pill once a day.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for any of the presenters? There's one from the chat. Go ahead. So that's it for the questions. Thank you again very much. And please visit the tables out there. Also, we have this on our HARP website as well. We have links to all the research in the Valley. So thank you again. And Brad, we'll take it back to you, and Portia D.
Thank you. All right, we'll move things back to this side of the room. As our Positively Aging Project 7th year is continuing this afternoon. We saved the best 2 for last. Let's see, there we go. But no, we've had some wonderful speakers today and some great information, but we do have two keynote